The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello, friends. Thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week, we're going to review Austin's 2-0 loss away in Kansas City. We'll preview the upcoming NYCFC match and cover some other Austin FC news, including Musa Djitte's future, Austin's newest first-team addition, and some juicy new details about the Osman Bukari deal. My name is Landon Cottam, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody. I am Jeremiah Bentley. And Landon, I kind of wanted to, it seems like a long time ago now, but I wanted to go over our night at Turnstile last Wednesday night with Austin Community Soccer Association and Austin's Men's Soccer Association. It's a trivia event. There were, I think, 10 teams. It was a good time. It was a good crowd. I think the most exciting part for both of us is we got to spend some time with, I guess, former Austin resident at this point, Adrian Healy.
Yeah, it was a great time. I was really happy with the turnout. We probably had, 75 to 100 people show up at Turnstile. Like you said, 10 teams. So really good participation. It felt like everyone else had a good time. So maybe we can do something like that again in the future. But yeah, great as always to see Adrian there back from his adventures in mostly Southeast Asia. Is that where him and his wife have been traveling?
Right, for like 6 months.
Yeah, I got to catch up with him and kind of hear what he has planned for the future. But yeah, he also participated in trivia, which when some people found out, they're like, well, this isn't fair. And I was like, well, he doesn't know that much more information than you do about any of the things that we're going to ask about in these questions. And then actually was probably severely disadvantaged for a lot of the categories, which had to do with like Austin history and Austin soccer history, which he wasn't around for a lot of it. So I think they did end up getting second place though.
They did okay. And Adrian did I believe that he got the question that he was the answer to correct also. Like he was, yeah. We might have known he was going to come and we might have written a question where Adrian Healy was the proper response. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. I didn't know what to expect. Every time we do one of these, I get nervous. It's just going to be like me and you sitting and looking at Long and 3 other people. So I was really, really happy to see the crowd there. And I would look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jeremiah, we are recording just after 8:00 on Monday night, which means we aren't quite missing, but are watching the USMNT game I'm watching on a tiny corner of my second monitor here. And I think you have a TV over in the far side of the room.
That's exactly right. I know there's just a group of players on the pitch right now, and I have no idea what happened and what's going on. Hopefully this all works out for the U.S. and we may wrap this up in time to see the end of it individually. But
I was going to say, is it
all the soccer? But
is it a blessing that we're missing it? But then you were like, I'm going to turn it on. I was like, oh crap, I'm going to turn it on too. Then.
No, yeah, it's a complicated relationship and a complicated team. And I think when I was on with Mike and got Greg Berhalter and Josh Wolff confused, and can't remember if I called him Greg Wolff or Josh Berhalter, but
I think you said Greg Wolff.
Greg Wolff. Yeah, it just sort of like adds to the frustration of maybe what's going on in Austin too. But maybe US will pull it out and we'll be happy and I'll be wrong in an hour and a half.
All right, let's get into the story of the week. So I mean, talking about the game this week, we'll get to the news about Djitte, Bukari, and some other stuff later on. But we're going to talk about the game for now. 2 shots, period, in this game. Not 2 shots on goal, 2 shots, period, against Kansas City had a lot more. I don't know what their number ended up being, but it was a lot more. Like, I don't even know what to say about this at this point.
Yeah, it was 14, by the way. It was 14-2. And against a team that was I believe it was it 17 matches since they had recorded a clean sheet? The team is has leaked a lot of goals this year. And I think about I almost texted Nate Bukari because he was so down when we interviewed him about everything about Sporting Kansas City before that match when we did the preview with him. Just to I got a little bit of joy of hoping that Nate's like off the ledge, but like as an Austin fan, there's nothing good about that. And this continues. I'd look some stuff up about the sort of the woes on the road. Like this continues a very worrying trend. So now Austin's averaging 6 total shots per match away, 1.5 shot on target. And if you throw out the FC Dallas match where Austin had 19 shots and 4 on target in Frisco, they're averaging under 5 shots and 1.3 shots on target in per away match. So it's now with 11 matches on the road, it's hard to say that this is anything other than a trend and a worrying trend. And I don't know, like what can you attribute this to?
I mean, like Danny Pereira being gone, I think is part of it, but Danny Pereira was there for some of those games, right? Like,
right.
I think in this specific game, looking at the lineup, like I was okay with this lineup. I think really the only option there even was like, what does the midfield look like? Do you put Valencia in the midfield or you put Owen Wolff in the midfield? And in a game where,
and that affects your starter on the wing, right? Because like then that's it basically option wise.
I was thinking like, okay, yeah, I don't mind this, like seeing Austin maybe putting Owen in the midfield, maybe says we're going to try to play on the front foot a little bit more. And had that been the case, like maybe that would have been the right choice, but we ended up not playing on the front foot. We ended up being pinned into our own final third the entire match. And like, I'm fine with playing a little more conservative on the road, but like you play conservative in terms of your positioning and how many numbers you're throwing forward. Conservative doesn't mean passive. And even if you're not pressing, you still need to be active and vigilant in your mid-block defense. You like if you're not throwing numbers forward, you still need to put effort into creating options off the ball and pushing your line a little higher to win the ball back and little things like that. We'll get into some comments made after the game about Austin FC's effort in this game. But I think it has to do with coming out with the idea that, okay, we're on the road. MLS is a crazy league where the odds are stacked against you, no matter what team you are, who you're playing. The odds are stacked against you on the road. And so Austin goes out trying to play a bit more conservatively, and that's worked out well at times. But sometimes when the other team comes out and punches you in the mouth, Austin just gets pinned back and can't do anything about it. And I think that's what happened the other night.
Yeah, what we've seen from Austin when they play like this, when it's been successful, is some counterattacking. And it was straight horseshoe of sadness from Austin. I believe there was one ball all match into the final third, if that's right. I was looking at the passing chart. I
think you could barely call it horseshoe of sadness though, because I feel like horseshoe of sadness happens like at least partially in the attacking half. And that was not happening in this game.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. There was no attacking half on that. And then we know Austin is not a team blessed with speed, but I have not necessarily thought of Sporting KC as a super fast team. And it's just like Austin looked out athleted all night long too.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about like being pinned in, you have to be able to do something to break up the other team's momentum at times. And I think two of the main ways you can do that is by having some bite in your defense and taking the ball off of them at times, or if that's not happening and you get pinned back, when you do win the ball, being able to play out and keep the ball a little bit. Austin was doing neither of these things. And so we were not taking the ball off of them. KC had their entire team. Eventually they would work up and up and up and just be camped in our half of the field. When we win the ball back, we'd be so pinned down that Hunter Obrion is making tackles at the top of the box. And if we win the ball, even when he was high, we were playing long balls and nothing was coming of it. Kansas City would win it back and come right back at us, which led to one of their goals. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. But even so, when he was long, it wasn't helping. But a lot of times he wasn't even up there. We had everybody back, just all hands on deck. We got to do whatever we can to keep this ball from going in the goal. And just we're doing nothing to stop their momentum.
Yeah, and you see that if you look at the momentum chart, it's very blue for a really long time. And so it was not surprising when the goals, especially when the first goal came, like it felt like it was inevitable, and we get into the specifics of that. And it was one of those games that maybe Austin's only hope is some like Driussi magic on the road. And I don't feel like Sebastian Driussi had a great performance either. And so and he was pinned super deep, just like everybody else. So Austin lost the potential for that kind of game-changing, like smash and grab draw that maybe Austin could have gotten, and that is not a really great result against the second worst team in the Western Conference. But it was definitely not Austin's night on Saturday.
Let's get into some of these post-game comments from both Josh Wolff and Brendan Hines-Ike. Do you want to read us the comment from Wolff here?
I'll start with the Wolff one because I feel like the Wolff one is the one that's generated the most commentary, online, and Phil West and Verde all day talked about it a lot. So this is in the post-game press conference. He said there was one team that needed to win, and there was another team that looked like it would just be nice to win. We knew that was the reality of it. That team, Kansas City, was up there against the wall. They have to win games right now. That's where they're at. And the approach from our guys from the standpoint of effort and attitude and toughness missed the mark significantly. And, I mean, that's a hard quote to hear as a fan after that performance. Maybe get into Hines. You cover what Hines-Ike said, and we can contrast them.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hines-Ike was trying to say the same thing and maybe said it a bit more elegantly than what Wolff did. But he was talking about like the effort and the toughness in a game. And I think somebody had like a follow-up question, and he clarified that like, we have this toughness. It exists within this team, but we have to show it every game. And so he went on to say that, like, I'm not going to fault mistakes or having a bad day on the field, making a mistake on the field. But the quote was, attitude and willingness to work is non-negotiable. And so reading between the lines here, I feel like what Brendan Hines-Ike was saying, without outright saying, is that we are not good enough to not give maximum effort every game. Like, we can't half-ass it and expect to get away with results. And like, I agree with that. And I'm glad that he is saying that. And like, that is an understood thing. And he said, we talked about it before the game. It clearly didn't take, but talked about it again after the game. As soon as the result was over, Brendan was saying, yeah, we talked about it in the locker room just now, that we can't afford to play like this. And so going back to like Wolff's comment, I don't disagree with what he said. It did look like one team had their back against the wall and like needed this result. And the other team is like, okay, we're on the playoff line. Like, it would be nice to win this one. But it's not super inspiring to hear that said in that way from the head coach, in a way that made it sound like he was not involved in this game.
Yeah, that's my problem with it, right? Like, coming from a player saying that, like, the players talking about the players, and coming from the coach, it feels like the coach is trying to place the blame anywhere other than himself. I think Phil tried to follow up with a question, basically like, doesn't this start with the coach? And he kind of got dismissed on that. So it's just, and it was not a good look on a frustrating night. And I think, obviously, Josh Wolff is not very good at media. I don't think anybody would argue that point. But this just is another one of those nights that just calls for some, self-reflection. Like, we all screwed this up. We'll do better. Let's move on. And that is not what we got. And I think for a fan base that sees a team now in 10th and sitting outside the playoff line, I think there's like, it looks basically like 10 teams in a 9-team race, and Austin is in 10th. Like, that's just not the kind of stuff that leaves one very excited or feeling really good about the future of this club with his coach.
Yeah, I don't usually don't get a chance to listen to the North End before we record, but I did listen to most of it today. And Zach went in really hard on Sebastian Driussi for this game because of the fact there were moments where it looked like he wasn't putting in maximum effort, not the whole game, but just little moments. And his point was, if the guy wearing the armband isn't doing those things, how do you expect him to hold other people accountable for not doing those things? And even if he was doing those things, is Driussi the kind of guy who will hold people accountable for that? And I know I've been one to kind of dismiss some of the concerns about Driussi's ability as a captain, saying like, if the players are fine with it, I'm fine with it. But in a game where you have Johnny Russell on the other side of the field, I think any Kansas City player would die for Johnny Russell. And Like maybe that's true of Sebastian Driussi, but we do not see like signs of that coming out here or there as far as like him demanding respect, at least in the breadth of ways that Johnny Russell does. Yeah, Driussi works hard in most games. We see moments where he's not, and it seems like he is fairly well respected. But as far as like commanding respect on the field, motivating players, I don't think we necessarily see that. So I think Zach has a point there. And then I know that there's a lot of games where I've been dismissive of people saying that everything that happened here is Josh Wolff's fault. In a game like this, okay, you can't control. We'll talk about some missed chances in this game. Talent limits some of that, but this is a game where I am more than willing to say this is at least partially, if not more than partially, on the coaching staff for not having a better plan, or at least like being able to motivate these players a bit more to push a little harder, or to at least have some patterns of play, some drills running to get out of these moments. And it looked like anytime they won the ball back when they were pinned deep, they were just lost. They didn't know what to do. And then whenever they did kind of get a lifeline out, that's when the talent let them down. And so I think those two things kind of compounded on each other and just led to a really miserable night.
Yeah, so I don't think we have anything else more to say like in the opening about it, other than like we're gonna get into some of the details of this and maybe talk about a little bit more about like why this happens and what this night is. And then I feel like the Austin FC news section will make us feel happier because there's some like down the road goodness that's coming for this club. But let's go ahead and take a break and then we can dive into some specific moments.
All right, sounds good.
No one is around.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FEF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FEF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education. And they have their own podcast called Summary Judgment. And also, because I follow them on Instagram, I'm going to assume you do too. Even if you never need a lawyer, there's a lot of cute dog photos on their Instagram account. So you should, if you need a lawyer, go to FEF Law. If you just love looking at dogs, follow FEF Law on Instagram.
You can go to FEF.law to find out what makes FEF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's FEF.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. As a credit union, Amplify has no shareholders or parent companies. That means more of your money stays in the community.
Amplify has been the home of fee-free banking since 2022. Their free checking accounts come with 0 overdraft fees or minimum balance. That means Amplify's fee-free checking accounts can help you get more mileage from your everyday spending.
Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more and to register for free parking at the Amplify Esperanza branch, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower-soccer. All right, we are back. Let's talk about some more details of this away loss in Kansas City. Jeremiah, where should we start?
Well, I think let's start with the midweek press conference. Josh Wolff talked about not underestimating Sporting KC, obviously a club that he has a lot of familiarity with, coach he has familiarity with, a team, as we heard just before the break, that has their back against the wall, and that would turn out to be very prescient from him. I think another question was the health of everyone. I think everybody was seemed like maybe CJ Fodre had like a little knock. Otherwise, we've had mysterious injuries and illnesses appear, but everybody is healthy other than 2 guys going out. And then we'll get into the details of this a little bit later. We got news on Saturday that Jimmy Farkerloon had to sign a deal up from Austin FC 2. So Austin, I believe for the first time in a while, was actually able to field a full 20-man roster for this match, even though it still included 3 goalkeepers.
I think that might be maybe like the second time this whole year that we've had a full roster that did not include a second team player.
Oh, right, because there's nobody up on one of these short-term deals, partially because Alonso Ramirez can't. Farkerloon's now on a first-team deal. So, yeah, that was not available. So, lineup-wise, we touched on this a little bit. We get Stuver at the back, Biederu, Heinzike, Weisen, and Gallagher on the back line, which is like just the 11 or the 4 that we'll see. And I think maybe we can talk about John Gallagher and how getting a little bit of a break and having competition will probably be good for him down the road. You mentioned the question about what the midfield would look like, but we get Ring, Wolff, and Djitte, and then Finley, Rubio, and Obrian up top. So I think it's the exact same lineup as the match before, if I remember right. I don't think there was any. Well, actually, Finley comes in and Wolff comes in for Valencia, but more or less, this is 11 of the 12 that we've been seeing playing for the last.
Like you said
weeks.
before, that's really the only two variations available until Cascante and Danny come back. Like that's really the only two combinations we could see, and it involves a change of one player.
Yeah, which shows a little bit about this roster. Even though we talked about it's probably not necessarily an excuse for on this particular night the result that Austin gets.
Yeah, looking at the stats, I know possession ended up 51-49 overall, but I think that's a little misleading as to how this game went because Kansas City had 64% possession at halftime. And so Austin comes out in the second half and looks a little bit stronger, keeps a little bit more of the ball. And then their next big spell of possession is after Kansas City scores their second goal. So Kansas City dominated this game, and those possession numbers don't quite portray that. And when you look at just the overall numbers for the 90.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think the ones that do is shots 14-2 Sporting KC, shots on target 2-0 for Sporting KC, which means this is a game where there's 2 goals. What's 2 shots on goal, no saves? I think it's right because both the Kansas City shots on goal went in and Austin had none. Then XG Kansas City also has the clear advantage.
Oh yeah. All right, let's get into some of the major match events. So Austin gets one decent chance about 13 minutes in, a pretty good little sequence of combination play moving up the field. Ends with Obrian cutting back onto his right foot. Looked really promising, a good position, a good area to strike from. And he doesn't hit it very well. And it's like the initial angle looks like, oh, that was really close. And if you watch the replay, the ball lands outside of the wide part of the 6-yard box when it goes out. And so it was actually not all that close, but the sequence leading up to that was pretty good. That was about it. We'll talk about one other chance here in a little bit, but that was kind of all that happened for Austin, saving one or two other moments.
Yeah, I would say the one thing on that shot is it looked like the kind of shot that should have been a curler back in toward the goal, and it just never curled. And so it just
he started it too wide, and then also
kept going wider.
Yeah. So Kansas City scores their first goal in the 26th minute. Tim Liebold. So Austin wins the ball. This is one of those moments where we win the ball. Beer is actually able to kind of possess the ball, compose himself, look up field to try to play out. He plays a long outlet ball, but Kansas City wins it back, and they're immediately back on us. Alan Pulido, who is playing as their striker, but dropping in, he's really good at kind of dropping into pockets and playing a bit as like a playmaker as well. And he was doing this to us all night, where he'd drop in, receive the ball, immediately ping it out to someone else, and that's a line broken, and Austin's on their heels. And he did that to us over and over and during this game. This happens in this one. He pops up behind Owen Wolff and ahead of the center back, just kind of in a space where nobody can really get to him. They play it to him, catches Biro napping a little bit and kind of spins him in a circle, plays Caden Pierre, their right back, in behind. He hits a really long ball all the way across the box, and I thought he just mishit it. But on the replay, watching it again, it was like, I think he meant this and was looking for Liebold on that far side. And so it falls to Liebold on the backside. I thought once the ball is in that position, it was decently defended. Nothing too much to fault here, but the shot deflects off of Gallagher's thigh and makes it impossible for Stuver to even think about getting to. And so you might say, like, in a different game where Austin is like this is one of Kansas City's only chances, and Austin is getting some chances and can't make one go in, you might call this unfortunate or unlucky. But in a game where Kansas City just camped out in our final third, like it's hard to say, it's hard to call Austin FC unfortunate in this situation, because like if this one didn't go in, another one probably should have, or there's another thing that didn't break their way that maybe could have. And so it's hard to feel too bad for them in this occasion whenever they're kind of asking for it.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about that. I think it felt like an inevitable moment. And the deflection off Gallagher was like kind of tricky, because at first it felt like Brad was just like flat-footed and should have made an effort on the ball. But like when I went back and watched the replay and saw what happened, it made total sense that he did not have the time to do that. And one of the other things as a fan that you have the advantage of is you're watching the camera that has like the full field of vision. And I don't know who's like in front of Brad or like where he's getting blocked off or whatever in that moment too. So I don't think that was on him. I also don't think it matters. Like you said, like that goal was going to come no matter what.
Yeah. Austin gets one more decent chance in the 38th minute. Gallagher, I think it's in a transition moment again. Gallagher ends up with the ball kind of on the left-hand side at the top of the box, plays a square ball to Driussi at the top of the box, but leaves it a bit behind him. And so I think if he plays a cleaner pass there, Driussi can either create a shot or maybe find another pass on an on-rushing player and kind of playing them through. But instead, he has to just throw his foot at a ball and ends up playing it to Obrian, who's offside. And he puts it in the back of the net, but he's, 4 yards offside.
He's very offside, yeah.
The beginning of the second half looks a little bit better. Austin keeps a bit more of the ball. Väisänen, again, in a moment where we are actually to kind of able to compose ourselves in the back, play out. Väisänen finds Driussi to spring a counterattack. It ends with Rubio playing Driussi into the box, squares the ball for Obrian, streaking down the middle of the box. But and this is maybe our best chance of the game. And the pass from Driussi is a little bit behind Obrian, and he's not able to get it out from his feet. Yeah, I think maybe if like Driussi is on the end of that pass, he's maybe able to get it on there, but Obrian not so much, and just kind of scuffs it, and it trickles into the keeper's hands.
And you say that because that is the second of the two shots that Austin gets.
Right. Yeah, all of our 0.4 something XG came mostly from that chance that, like, if you watch it in person, it was like, that was their best chance.
Exactly.
Kansas City gets their second in the 69th minute. Steven Afrifa gets this one. So Väisänen gives up the ball near the halfway line. Like, we're in our like attacking shape. So everybody's thrown forward. We're chasing the game at this point. Väisänen just like has a loose touch and gives it up. And Driussi and Valencia are able to kind of close down on Russell, who the ball fell to. And he tries to play a ball forward. It bounces off Valencia's chest and unfortunately just bounces straight back into Kansas City's hands. And they play forward again. Russell is able to kind of give Biru a little shake and bake and push past him. And at that point, it's Russell sprinting towards our goal, and our two center backs, maybe 10 yards ahead of him, also sprinting towards our goal. And from this point, like, I was looking like, oh, who could have done a little better here? And it's like Heinz Ike is running towards the back post, and he has a free fall on his shoulder. But then Alan Pulido is also running just right up the gut, and Valencia is a little behind him. And I think Heinz Ike can see that Valencia is not going to get there in time to close off that angle entirely. So he's not able to cheat too much and needs to kind of play both potential balls. And then the ball that Russell ends up hitting is just perfect. And so, like, once you're in that position, I don't think anybody did anything too terribly wrong. But going back to what got us in that position is Väisänen cannot give the ball away in that state of the game. Like, there's nobody behind you. There's no help. And like, when you give a ball away in that moment, you're going to get punished. And a guy like Johnny Russell is going to punish you.
Yeah, I thought Johnny Russell had a really good game for a lot of reasons. I mean, that and what you mentioned earlier, just this like leadership on the field. Because you talked about Austin had a lot of possession in the second half. Austin had a lot of possession without a lot of purpose at that point. We talk usually, there's some conversation around subs, but I feel like this is a spot where Austin makes the subs we can make. We see Valencia, Sardes, and Jimenez come in. Jimmy Farkerloon does get his first, 8 minutes probably total, including 7 minutes total, including extra time. Looked
He didn't get
like
a
a guy.
chance to do much. Like there
Yeah.
wasn't a lot of game to be played, and he wasn't involved in a ton of it. So hard to judge him too much on this one. But yeah,
But good for him. Is there any notable performances you wanted to talk about? Good, bad, or indifferent? Probably not good. There probably
I mean,
were not a lot
mostly
of great
bad.
performances.
Mostly bad. I would say like Brendan Heinzeich was probably fine. Väisänen was fine outside of that major error that leads to the second goal. Outside of that, man, it's hard to praise anybody.
Yeah, it was a rough night all the way around. And I guess one of the things that's going to make it tough going forward is Diego Rubio also picks up it's kind of his 5th yellow. I was reading through the disciplinary rules because it's either like 5 yellows or a combination of like yellows plus post-match, what do they call it? Post-match disciplinary action. So his actual problem is there was like 5 guys that got disciplined after the fact and fined for their mass confrontation policy.
Oh yeah, okay.
Thing, and that's where Rubio, because I was looking through it, looked like Rubio, because he went like 8 games without a yellow. Like this should only be his 4th, but then like that mass confrontation policy violation is what
counts
leaves
towards
him.
This.
That counts toward this, even though it wasn't a yellow. Which means we were just talking off the top about how hard it is to find goals. It's going to be even more challenging to do that against NYCFC coming up on this Saturday.
Yeah, and yeah, we can talk more about that issue in the NYCFC preview, but Gyasi Zardes cannot play full 90 minutes, and so I don't know what happens when he comes off the field. Anybody else you want to talk about?
Well, I guess I will take it. I feel ready to do this. I'm going to take an all caps moment. Do we have a sound effect? I forget.
All caps.
All right. After this game, Owen Wolff plays 90 minutes. After this game, I continue to read on pick your social media platform or favorite troll journalist in the Austin FC community talking about how Owen plays every minute of every game. He never comes off the field. Clearly, it's because he's an Epo baby. We have all these other options, but yet Josh only trusts Owen and keeps going back to Owen. And I have to admit, maybe I've read too many of those. And so a little bit, I'm like, yeah, that probably makes sense. Like, it does seem like he's on the field a lot. So I actually went and looked at the numbers. So he's 11th on the team in minutes played this year. So not playing every single minute. He started fewer than half the matches. And I feel like all of us probably would be happy, including Owen Wolff, for Owen Wolff to play future minutes. But the reason he's getting his minutes is not because he's a Nepo baby. It's because he's like the Swiss Army knife of a team that is very thin. And he's like the best option a lot of times. Like if Danny Pereira had been an option against Sporting KC, yeah, we probably would have seen 30 minutes out of Owen Spelling, Ethan Finley on the wing and nothing else. But it's just, that's the way this team is right now. And I feel like he suffers so much because so many people like including me, have a problem with his father being the coach, but like, that's not Owen Wolff's fault.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I was having a conversation with someone a while back about Owen Wolff, and their take was that he's not even good enough to play in this league, and the only reason that he's on the team is because his father is the coach. And I was like, you are a crazy person if you believe that. Like, Owen Wolff is absolutely good enough to be in this league. Like you said, like we wish we had the luxury of playing him fewer minutes in like a spot role. That would be what's best for the team and what's best for him. But he is what we have right now. Going further into this conversation with this person, they then started talking about Gyasi Zardes and said, we should go out and sign Olivier Giroud or someone like that. But instead we have Gyasi Zardes. I was like, oh, we're having a different conversation here. Like, do you not think that if we could get Olivier Giroud, we would have him already? Like, we're talking about different things. And I think most people talking the way that you mentioned about Owen Wolff either are bad actors who mostly just hate Josh Wolff and are looking for ways to say bad things about him, or don't know what they're talking about. And I think most of them fall into these two camps.
I think we should take a break on that and talk about some Austin FC news.
Jeremiah's like, I'm not touching that.
No, I don't. I agree. I don't know. Nobody needs to listen to me say like, yeah, Landon, you're right. I think those are the motivations of most of the people who have those takes, but they are. And so I don't have anything to add to that.
All right, let's take a break. We'll be right back with some Austin FC news, which is maybe the funnest part of the show.
Moon Tower Soccer's premier sponsor is McGuire Woods Consulting. McGuire Woods Consulting helps clients in the public affairs space from lobbying at the local, statewide, and federal levels to digital and communications campaigns across the country.
McGuire Woods Consulting has offices in 10 MLS cities, but only advertises on this podcast because it's the home of the two-time reigning Copa Tejas champions, which is the most important trophy in professional sports. Contact our friends at McGuire Woods Consulting at mwcllc.com for more information.
Moon Tower Soccer is also brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. The Sage Wilson Realty team is made up of Austin experts who are client-focused and have over 30 years of combined real estate experience. Our friends at Sage Wilson Realty are giving away 2 tickets to an upcoming match, so fill out the form in the show notes for your chance to win.
If you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com. All right, Jeremiah, let's jump into the Austin FC news of the week. Where should we start here?
Well, let's just start with the summer transfer window officially opens on July 18th. We know 3 moves have been made, and like we have some insight, basically based upon what we've seen so far, and the news coming out as late as today about what this window might look like. So maybe let's just go through some of the things that have happening with players in, players out, and maybe how that affects anything else we could see in the summer window.
Yeah, I guess let's start with the 3 we know. I think everyone listening to this knows about these, but we've got Mikkel Dessler coming in, a right back. We've got Alexander Svatok coming in at center back. We've got Osman Bukari coming in as a winger. Whenever those 3 guys came in, that fills all of our senior roster spots. We got an announcement today. Thank you, Austin FC and Austin FC comms team, for getting it out today before we recorded, but got word that Djitte has mutually terminated his contract with Austin FC. So he's free to go play wherever he wants. Austin FC is off the hook for any of his roster spots or budget charge or anything like that. And his senior roster spot that he would have filled back in after his loan expired is now available to use for one of these guys we've already signed. But it's not like we have an extra one now. It's just we have enough for the guys we already have now, is all that means. And so there was a rumor about an Israeli midfielder, Dor Peretz, I think last week or a couple of weeks ago. I mean, do we think this is legit at this point, given Austin's roster status?
I don't. To your point, it's 1 in, 1 out at this point, and I think maybe that came up. I think at the
Bukari
event, the media event, yeah.
Burrell said as much. Like, if we bring in anybody else at this point, it's because someone else left first.
This feels a little bit to me, because this is an attacking midfielder, not Austin's greatest need. Like, if this guy was a striker,
I disagree.
Maybe you disagree. Okay, but I would just say this feels kind of like the original to me, like the original Leo Väisänen rumors, where this is a deal that maybe gets done in the winter, maybe it gets done next summer, knowing that Burrell like works ahead. And even on the center back, Djitte, so that was one they've been working on since November. This feels like one where there's legitimate interest, but probably it doesn't seem like there's anything immediate. Like, I can see this being an end of the year signing when Austin has a bunch of money coming off the books, including one Alex Ring, where you might have a greater need for more attacking talent in the midfield. It just does not feel like something's going to come together in this window, given all the complicating factors.
Yeah, at the very most, it's a thing that maybe they are pushing for now, but it's entirely contingent upon another deal, like outgoing deal, getting done, and so is not confirmed or even close to being confirmed for that reason. But yeah, I think the reality is probably more what you're saying.
Well, let's go to you mentioned the guys in. I think the one piece of news we have out of this is you went to the Osman Bukari welcome event on Tuesday of last week at the Continental Club, where apparently it was very loud, and I think you had a chance to talk to the player, but you had to be standing like in his ear to even hear him. And you got some insight. I think Burrell did an availability too, right? So you got a little bit out of
Correct.
him also.
Yeah, they both did. I mean, with Bukari, I mean, he kind of gave the answers you'd expect, but then also said like I've been wanting to try to come to MLS for the last year or so. This popped up, and I wasn't going to say no to it. Like I was wanting to come to MLS. I got my opportunity, and I'm ready to take it head on. Then Burrell, I mean, he gave some updates about the roster status, and then talked about how long he's been chasing Bukari and Svatok as well. That like both of these guys, they've been after for months and months and months. Like since last calendar year, they've been after these guys, and so you could kind of see the relief on his face to say like, we finally got it over the line. We finally got both of our guys here, and like, not that we got a guy. It's like no, we've been chasing these specific guys, and we got them.
Yeah, and one other quote that I thought was interesting that was very on brand for Burrell when he talked about like, my brand new scouting department that I hired, that has nothing to do with the people here before, has been searching the world and it's like identified players that you wouldn't believe, which I think it's a harkening back to the press conference he had at the end of last year when he talked about who's interested in Austin. I thought that one was kind of funny. And then is this where we got the insight that Bukari is actually, like as of today, I think will be in training?
That was in
midfield
okay. Press availability last week, but Wolff told the media present there that as of July 1st, he would be eligible to start training. So I don't think we've seen any images or video come out of training today, but as long as everything is going as planned, it seems like he would have started training with the team today on Monday.
And then do you have any other Bukari news before we move on to like another deal?
I know I saw Eric Goodman wrote about this as well, about learning a piece of news, but just some insight about this deal is that there are other MLS teams going after Bukari pretty hard, and Red Star apparently turned them down because of their place in the table at the time. Like Red Star's a big team in their league. They're chasing a title, and they weren't quite winning the title at this point in the season. So it seemed like they thought it would be bad optics to sell one of their best players while they're not in first place. And so the teams that reported were Chicago and the Galaxy. And so by the time they did win the title, like both of those teams have brought in players. Like they brought in big name players. They've filled their DP spots. And so it seems like Austin ended up getting a bit of a discount on Bukari because they were the only people still shopping at that point, whenever the Serbian season was over.
Well, it's good timing for once for Austin. I feel like Austin's been the victim of bad timing plenty. I guess one other point on the Djitte deal that we didn't talk about is so now Austin is down to one. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I wanted to say like whenever I think this is like just a good illustration of when we talk about like the spinning plates and how they're not looking at one player, they're looking at 50 players. And like this is just a good example of like what that actually looks like. It's like, okay, this is our guy. We want to give you the money for him. Can we have him? And the reality is, so do these two other teams, but also this is going on. And also like there's just so many factors that are out of a club's control. And it starts to become clear why like it's a skill to be able to do these things. It's not just the network. It's not just the scouting department. There's a lot that goes into it, and you could see how that would like overwhelm someone and be an easy thing to be pretty bad at.
Well, and that's also, this is illustrative of why we hate every time somebody sends us a question about who Austin should be targeting from outside the league or outside the world. It's like they're targeting a bunch of guys all at once, and one of them or none of them are going to come to pass, and we are entirely not smart enough to do that. It also shows why it's very much, like you said, it's very much a challenge to be a sporting director and a head coach at the same time and be very good at either job, because the sporting director job, particularly MLS, is so demanding.
All right. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, no, it's all good. I was just going to say on the Djitte deal, the one thing we didn't talk about is that because he's no longer a U22, which means that Austin only has one. John Coleman is the only U22 player left. So that should give Austin some additional flexibility, because if you only have one U22, you could do some other different things with your designated players. That feels like that part right there, and knowing what Burrell has done so far, I think I'm not surprised that he's going to have that he's taking advantage of that additional flexibility to either bring in more young players or use that spot on a DP, whatever works best for the world's worth of moves that a sporting director can make.
Yeah, so we've talked about some of the roster stuff that we're, I think, excited about. One thing about the roster that's been like a little confusing to me is the fact that we have so many supplemental spots open. So we got the announcement late last week that Jimmy Farkerlin got signed to a proper first team deal. Like I saw the headline come through and I was getting ready to go play in my rec league game. And so I didn't read it because I just assumed that it said Jimmy's getting called up to a short-term loan agreement. He's going to go sit on the bench for a game. And if he plays, this is his last time he can do it or whatever. And after my game, I read it again. I was like, oh no, this is a proper contract. Like he's on the team for the rest of the year. And so he's going to be on a supplemental spot the rest of the year with options for the next 2 years, if I remember correctly. And correct. I think one of the more interesting parts here is that he's not taking up an international spot. We don't know when that changed, right? It mentions that he has a green card, so he's not going to take up a spot. But it seems like that wasn't the case at the beginning of the year, and maybe why he's just now getting that contract.
Yeah, that was a bit of a surprising note, because we thought originally that happened, maybe that was like Austin's last international slot. And then if you read far enough down, in this press release, it talks about, it says he will occupy a supplemental spot and will not take an international designation as U.S. green card holder. So that is a real positive for him, and why maybe he's the guy as opposed to some of the, like Val Noel, for example, is a guy that I think a lot of people would have liked to have seen get some minutes in the attack, but a guy that was going to take an international slot. So definitely an advantage for him. I mean, it's no risk right to the first team because it's a half a year guaranteed contract.
Yeah.
And the MLS-ness of this all, he also signed a loan agreement back to Austin FC 2. So now the club has complete flexibility to play him up or play him down.
And they did. Him and CJ both started for Austin FC 2 the following day in Kansas City.
So there you go. That's one of the advantages of being there in the same city. So, good deal for him. I don't know that a lot will come out of it. I know as recently as 1 week ago, having any kind of winger option available to take up minutes, especially with what happened to CJ, like would have been good. So I don't know if it's earth shattering, but it's a good use of the supplemental roster.
Yeah, and like you said, it's low risk, especially like the biggest barrier was the international spot. If he's not taking that, great, let's do it. It's very low risk. As far as like the rest of the supplemental spots, like what do you think the play is there? Why have we not filled any of them? It is like I think what I think like we're assuming Burrell is competent. Position would be he wants to wait until this off-season, like this summer transfer window or an off-season when he has time to actually scout players to bring guys in and bring in the guys that he wants and not make panic signings or just bringing in whoever's available and getting stuck in some bad contracts or getting stuck on guys that he doesn't actually want the next year. I think that's the generous view of it, or like assuming he's good at his job view of it. Like, what is the other view of it? Like, what is the other reason it could be for why we're not filling these spots?
Yeah, I think what it comes down to, one, I mean, he does seem to have a clear preference for European players, right? And he does not seem to be very interested in giving minutes to MLS journeymen unless he absolutely has to, which I feel like is a lot of what you would see in a supplemental in one way. And the other types of players you would be in-house options, right? Austin FC 2 players, people who are drafted the super draft that might play up. And every one of those, like when you go through the real world names, every one of those players have an issue. So like Val Noel's an international. Alonso Ramirez is international. Austin only had one pick of the super draft. So there's not the Aiden Stanley, the other center back that we all love, whose name I've already forgotten now. Freddie Clemens of the of the world to be around. And so part of it's just he seems really committed and not signing people just to sign people, and then there's like a lot of flaws in who otherwise might fill those spots.
We've also got kind of this missing generation problem of our academy not having been around long enough to fill any of those spots. So maybe some of those is like, okay, a year from now, maybe Irvin Torres is ready for one of those. Maybe Micah Burton is ready to start getting onto the bench for the first team. But yeah, talking about like the European thing, like it's not like we still have the same issue. It's not like we're going to bring in a bunch of European guys and fill supplemental spots, because they're going to need international roster spots, at least for a while. Right. So,
right.
Yeah, I think we've seen enough good things from him to give him the benefit of the doubt and like believe that he has a plan for him. But it's been interesting to just see them sit vacant all year.
You want to talk about some guys playing international or maybe not, some guys involved in international competition and not playing internationally and not playing for Austin?
Yeah. So Venezuela clinched their group at Q2 Stadium the other night. And did you turn on this game at all or see any of the like pictures or videos from it?
I've seen the pictures and videos. I did not watch any of the game, but it looked like an amazing atmosphere.
Yeah, I talked to some people who were there, and they said it was like the most rockin' Q2 has ever been. Like any game, any competition, like comparing it to like those 2022 playoff games, as far as like how like high level the atmosphere was for these games. Yeah, Venezuela fans brought it, man. Like I was gonna try to go to this game, and I kept thinking like, oh, a ticket will come available late on, or like the prices will go down. And a few hours before the game, there's still like $130, $150 was the cheapest ticket there. And after I turned the game on and saw, I was like, oh, okay, I understand why now. It's every Venezuelan who could get here wanted to come. So much to the point that I saw Hernan post a video of some fans who couldn't get tickets rushing one of the gates and just like pushing their way in, essentially, which is maybe part of why it was so crowded in the stadium there. But yeah, they clinched their group, move on to the next round, which on one hand, good for Danny. Glad he's getting this experience. On the other hand, he's not playing. They were up 3-0 the other night, and he still didn't get on the field. And so it's a little frustrating to watch him be there with this team, not playing in a moment where we could very much use him on the field for Austin.
So on the other hand, Julio Cascante also not playing. And I was a little bit surprised by this. Costa Rica also not winning. So we could see Julio back. We probably will see Julio back earlier than Danny. As it stands right now, they would have to win, Brazil would have to lose, and they would have to make up a 6-point goal differential on Brazil in order for Costa Rica to make it out. So it's one player Austin will have back relatively soon.
Yeah, and then on other international fronts, we got to see Alexander Svatok play for Ukraine. So he did not play their first two group stage matches, but then started in the third one, middleman in a back five, and it ended up 0-0 draw. I think they ended on 3 or 4 points. It was a weird group where everyone had the same amount of points, but the goal differential was, and so they ended up with more points than other teams that moved on to the knockout round, but did not move on to the knockout round. Our man Svatok, did you get a chance to see any of this at all?
I didn't watch any of this. I didn't get to watch many of the games last week. Silly work got in the way of it. So
Yeah,
I'm kind of annoyed by, but I didn't see this one.
Man, our guy was good. Like I had already watched a fair amount of tape on him and was excited, and watched this one. They were playing Belgium, and he was pretty much in a wrestling match with Romelu Lukaku for most of the game and held his own. Like it ended 0-0. They kept them pretty quiet and did not give up a ton of really big chances. And he was not a passenger in that effort. He was very much active in it. And so, like, I know like people who are Premier League fans or European soccer fans have their criticisms of Romelu Lukaku, but if you compare him to most strikers in MLS, if Svatok can hold his own against Lukaku, he's going to do fine against Preston Judd or like whoever else. Like he's going to be fine. And so I got really excited watching him in this game. And like, I think him and Dessler are absolute home runs. And they're going to step right in and be really good players as soon as they get settled in.
Yeah, and I guess to go back to a little bit, just briefly, because I feel like we talked about this before. I mean, it does seem like the one position now where Austin has a surplus is at center back. And it feels like that's, if the one man out thing is true, which it is, it feels like that's a spot where somebody, I mean, Matt Hedges or Julio Cascante, maybe even, who are known commodities in the league, may have some value. And I wouldn't be shocked to see either one of those guys go out.
Yeah. And when I was editing the show last week, I think you asked me a question and I didn't quite clock it and answered a different question. But I think you were asking like who I would want to bring in if we were to trade someone. And I said like Cascante would be one of the better values as far as outgoing guys, right? As far as flexibility and being able to get some assets in. As far as players I would like to bring in on some of these trades, I don't think I'm alone in thinking this, but Leo Campana for Miami is a guy who, like, he's a DP for them right now. And so he's probably the biggest obstacle to them bringing in someone like Di Maria or another like European superstar. And so there's a non-0% chance they might try to deal him. And maybe the best value they can get is within the league. And so if Austin has the room to do it or has the capital to do it and could send some players out and able to make it happen, like that is a player that, like, a proven goal scorer in the league, like coming in for not cheap, but less money than trying to bring in, I don't know, Luis Suarez or Olivier Giroud or someone like that, but probably going to score as many goals as both of those guys if he gets a starting role for over a longer period of time.
Yeah, that was the guy I was hoping you would say, because I'd seen you post that on Twitter, and I just kind of forgot about that. Yeah, and it's good. It's good for the team to have those options. Not to say that any of these things are going to come true, but there's some flexibility there to do whatever works best long term for the club.
All right. Anything else before we move on to our preview?
No, let's go ahead and talk about what's going on at Q2 this weekend.
All right. So Austin FC is being visited by NYCFC for the first time in an official competition, right? I think they've played them in preseason, maybe a few years back, and then played a preseason game behind closed doors at Q2 this preseason. But this is going to be the first time we've played them in a competitive match.
That's right. Was it one of those Verde Hill games maybe originally?
I think one of them
was training. Yeah,
was out at St. David's, and then the other one at Q2 this year.
So last year, NYCFC finishes 11th in the East, missed the playoffs. This year is a very different story. They made was it Mahadovic? Was that one of their most expensive off signings ever? Right, I think it was like an $8 million, $9 million player that they brought in during the offseason, but he's only played 209 minutes so far this year. So not an impact player that they thought that he was going to be, but also he's like 18. So maybe that was a move for the future. Sitting fifth in the East, have won 9 of their last 13 games. So they're on a pretty good streak. I don't know a lot about how they play. Have you had the chance to look in sort of their style of play? Or
I mean, I've not watched them this year. I have watched a fair amount of them in years past, and they are, like the City Football Group model is kind of what they want to do. So like what Austin would ideally be doing, or what like Bob Bradley's LAFC teams, where they keep the ball, they play attacking soccer, and that's kind of the front foot. I think there have been times over the last few years where they have been unable to achieve that for various reasons, be it injuries or underperforming attacking players, or not. For a while, they didn't have a proper striker, and we're playing their most promising winger as a striker. But I think they're kind of getting back to those ways of like playing proper, good attacking soccer, and have seen some success with it this year finally.
Yeah, I think the difference between this year and last year is they actually have had their full team together. I remember last year, like Tati Castellanos went out super late, and they were like having players come in, during the middle of the year, and it was super chaotic. They're really settled this year. You mentioned the striker. It's Mounsef Bakar is their. I wrote this note. He seems like NYCFC's version of Emiliano Rigoni, like plays a lot of games, plays a lot of minutes, doesn't score a lot of goals, but he did score in the last match that they played. So he's on a little bit of a warm streak. The All-Star, we didn't talk about this in the Austin FC news because there were none, But All-Star announcements came out today, and Thiago Martins, their center back, is their club's only All-Star. Austin had none, which I don't know. That's not surprising, right? Like, I can't imagine who on Austin other than maybe Brad Stuver is having the kind of year to be an All-Star.
Yeah, he was the only real chance. But yeah, they do have Santi Rodriguez, who's an attacking midfielder, and like he's not going to make the All-Star team because that position is stacked in this league, really. But he's got 8 goals and 7 assists, so having a really good season. Hannes Wolff is one of their new signings this year. He's got 4 and 4, and then Alonso Martinez, who's a guy I didn't really even know about until recently. He's got 6 goals and 2 assists. So they have a decent attack, even without guys like Bukari, like not firing. They have other guys who are kind of picking up that slack. And then some really classy midfielders in Keaton Parks and James Sands, where they're not necessarily going to score all the time, but as far as keeping the ball and kind of progressing the ball up the field, those guys are really good players in that regard.
Yeah, and Hannes Wolff is 1F, no relation to the Austin, Atlanta Wolff family, just in case anybody's following along with that. And then, so they beat, what was it, 4-2 last Saturday? They beat Orlando City. They scored 3 goals early, built a lead, and then we talked about this before we started recording, but they had one of the worst collisions, I don't know, I think I've ever seen any of, and I did not watch the replay. I only saw of like the wild view. So Malachi Jones, what is he? He's a midfielder for them, I think, right?
I think he started on the left wing in that game.
Yeah, winger on the game. And the Orlando goalkeeper had a nasty collision and left both players with broken fibulas and both players out for the year. And that's just...
I turned that game on after this had already happened, and I was like, why are there 13 minutes added on of stoppage time for the first half? And so I got on Twitter and was like, what went on? And then saw it's like, oh, broken leg. It was pretty gnarly. And I was like, okay, I'm going to stop looking in case I accidentally see a video on here, because I cannot handle that. I had some like kind of bad injuries in high school. And from that point on, like, I cannot handle watching people get hurt. I was fine with it before, but now I'm like, nope, I'm going to cover my eyes if it even looks like somebody's about to get hurt.
Yeah, it was pretty awful. So I guess the one of the things that Austin maybe has going for it is New York City FC does have a Wednesday night match at home against Montreal. So they'll be playing one of these 3 games in 8-day stretches. Since they played at home on a Friday, even though this is on a Saturday. I mean, it just, for me, it comes down to like, will the good Austin show up? Like, will the good home Austin show up being at home? And there's more reason to believe that team will show up, assuming that Sebastian Driussi doesn't catch a strange bug, more than before. Just because they're relatively healthy and have like a couple options off the bench, obviously with Danny not being back, they don't. But I mean, this game is still, it seems very winnable for Austin, but they have to be good and they have to score first. I think more than ever. Like the 2022 team could go down and come back, and did repeatedly. Like now it's just their confidence seems not great, and they don't seem to have the ability to rally.
Yeah, I think like you said, like, yeah, NYCFC's in good form. They're, I think, 5th in the East. They're a good team, but going back to like what Josh Wolff said about Kansas City last week, like, you can't underestimate them. And I'm always very much of that mindset where people are going into this Kansas City game and saying like, oh, we have to beat them, they're terrible. I was like, A, have you ever watched this league? And B, have you ever watched this Austin team? Like, I don't assume we're going to beat anybody, but the other side of that coin is, in this league, you can beat anybody on the right night. It's designed for that. Like, parity is built in. It is a feature, not a bug. And for that reason, the gap between the top and the bottom is never that big on a given night, especially when the lower seed is the home team. So it's very much possible if Austin can play a game like even what they looked like against Minnesota, which was not an amazing game, but was a competent, organized performance. Like, even that will give them a chance to win. But if they come out and look like they did against Kansas City, every team in the league is going to beat them.
I can't argue with that. So hopefully we'll have a fun night on Saturday. We'll see how that goes. The schedule doesn't get easier because Seattle's kind of on an upswing and also be playing on the road the next week. So this is one of those where if Austin's going to sort of stay connected to the playoff race between now and when reinforcements come, then this is one where Austin needs a result.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Like going into the Dallas match, is that next week or the week after? Yeah, that's the week after. So we have NYCFC, Seattle, Dallas midweek, and then Charlotte. And then those are the last 4 games before the Leagues Cup break. But like you said, like these 4 games are going to be huge, especially that Dallas one. Dallas is 7 points behind us in the table right now. And so if we can win even just that game, like that pushes them further down the table, pushes us further up the table, and puts us in a decent spot of being able to make those final playoff spots. And so like all of these are important to that end, but that one specifically. But yeah, I mean, an Eastern Conference team coming in here, this is NYCFC is not bad, so it's not a bonus game, but it is a bonus game in that these are bonus points where you're not giving up points to a Western Conference team. And so nicking this one would be a really good bonus. And then that Dallas one is another huge one.
All right. Well, I think we're ready to wrap it up for this week then.
Yeah. We'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Come find us on Twitter at LVHero87, JBentley_ATX. And then at Moon Tower Soccer on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. I still can't get used to saying the TikTok, but I checked it out the other day and like we're doing pretty well over there.
Yeah, the views are like pretty decent, and there's like more engagement on the TikTok posts than I expected to see. Like every one of those videos has some comments that I've tried to get in there and respond to. So if you follow us on TikTok, it's a pretty good chance at least one of us will find you at some point and reply when we remember where the comment section is on TikTok.
All right. Thanks so much for listening. We will be back next week with a review of NYCFC match and then a preview of the Seattle Sounders match, and then cover whatever Austin FC news comes our way. Until then, I'm Landon Cotto.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Thank for nothing, see you never.
La gente
Oh my God.